Now, this is B3 breakout session, Visions of Tourism, the new relationship between the value of experience and consumption. I'm a facilitator of this session. I'm the editor, curator, and director of Whole Universe. My name is Tsukada. Thank you for joining us. I would like to first introduce our panelists before I explain the purpose of this breakout session. So, next to me, Ellie Omiya, a writer. Also, we have Professor Takayuki Kubo, a Ritsumeikan Asia Pacific University. And then we have President and CEO of Hacosco, Naotaka Fujii is with us as well. Thank you. Why this panel will discuss tourism. In other breakout sessions, they talk about the future of city, the vision of economy. We'll be looking at the vision of tourism. It's a very specific topic compared to other breakout sessions. A session that will also deal with future local economy development. And the ICU theme needs the alternative view. And tourism, this industry requires the alternative way of looking at this industry. As we said at the keynote session, for the past 10 years of tourism, we try to focus on increasing inbound tourists. And that is part of the reason why we hosted Olympic and Paralympic Games. Target has been increasing the inbound tourism. Of course, that is not a bad target. True that some of the local economy were able to grow because of the tourism. We had new cultural facilities set up because of that. And some of the regions were trying to rebuild their local culture as well, thanks to the tourism industry. But because of the COVID-19, we were not able to travel. We were not able to welcome foreign visitors. Perhaps next year, the situation will be better, but not going to be as many as we used to receive. So when you think of the local value and resources we can offer, how can we connect tourism to these local resources? Because of the COVID-19, I think we better understand the problem that already existed before the COVID-19, such as over-tourism, that impacted negatively the well-being of the local residents. It's not just local community members. The local resources like nature, perhaps history as well, were worsened because of the excessive tourism. Earlier, we had a session discussing metaverse in this digital world. Tourism will also be affected by the digital technology. So that is why we decided to organize this breakout session. So without ado, I would like you to introduce yourself and give us your thought on this theme of visions of tourism. Starting with Omiya-san. Omiya-san, we haven't had a previous preparation meeting, so should we start with Fujii-san, rather? Me? Well, can I use this board? Yes, you can. So when it comes to tourism, what comes to my mind first is this medical, food, and housing. For the past 6 or 7 years, I have been focusing on virtual world even for promoting tourism. But honestly speaking, it's not so much fun. You can go anywhere in the virtual world, you can do anything, but it's not so much fun. So try to think of the cases where you really have to go physically to a certain destination. For example, the medical service, food, housing, these require to be there in the local locations. And I am a member of Meat Association, and that organized a tour to visit livestock farmers across Japan. It's not led by a agricultural cooperation. There are a lot of livestock farmers who are raising cattle. So this really requires people to move and travel to those farmers, to have fun, to be able to see what farmers are doing. A simple tour can happen in the VR virtual world, but if you really want to enjoy high quality of travel, you really have to be able to physically move. By the way, Fujii-san, the first part is medical service, isn't it? Well, we tend to think it's fashion or clothing, but this can be replaced by avatar in the virtual world. So I removed fashion. Instead, I included medical service. It has much to do with our own health. So food and health are all interrelated. And there is a hot spring medical service. This has been a tradition in Japan. It has much to do with tourism as well.
So let's go in order. May I ask you, Mr. Kubo, to give a self-introduction? Hello, I'm Kubo. My keyword is Kanko in tourism in Japanese is deteriorating, whereas tourism is growing. A little bit later, I would like to elaborate in details what I mean by this. So seeing something sparkly, shiny, that type of Kanko or tourism can be replaced by virtual, like Mr. Fujii said. So inclusive of medicine, food, and housing. Some tourism that requires physical movement, there are many types, and I think this is going to grow in the future. In fact, the difference between Kanko and tourism is something that I'm teaching in the initial courses at my university to the students. And I actually brought the same slides that I explained to my students. I would like to explain that to you a little bit later. So, why am I teaching in the field of tourism? I'm not a researcher, but I have been working at a company like many of you in the audience. So urban development architect was what I have been involved in. And I used to work for Mori Building when this building, Mori Building, was under construction. I was in charge of a project in Shanghai. And I had come back from Shanghai. I was tired and I wanted to do completely new. And Mori Foundation, I had an offer from them, and Professor Takenaka mentioned earlier about the ranking of the cities. And we were talking about how to develop a strong city. And after that, I left Mori Building, the foundation, and at a think tank, I have been doing research work. And in order to be competitive for a town or a city, I've come to realize that Kanko, which is tourism in Japanese, is important. It sounds like it's fun. However, it's about physical movement of people interacting with the others. And if you do further research about it, there are high indicators among cities when it comes to Kanko when the economy is strong. So the interaction of people is more important when it comes to Kanko, not just culture, but economic factors are important. And also protecting Kanko is important. And also innovation, interaction of human beings is also important. Sorry that I'm talking quite long, but at my university, I am teaching at Asia Pacific University. And cluster is a recently popular word, but we have 4 clusters within the university: international development, and where I belong, which is about tourism, and then culture, media, and the other one is international politics. And so I am the professor of the tourism cluster. To students who come, our department or our cluster is the most popular. International relations, these difficult sounding faculties are unpopular. And I asked my students why did they choose tourism, and they say, well, because it sounds fun. Because it sounds, sparkly, shining, and it sounds fun. And so these students are probably tricked, and that's why they are coming to my faculty, but it has a deep significance. And if I start talking about this, then it causes many fatalities amongst the students. So the word Kanko, which is tourism in Japanese, has a really depth meaning behind it. A little bit later, I would like to elaborate on the details. And sorry, my intro has been quite long. Thank you very much. So we look forward in hearing more elaborate details from you a little bit later. How about you, Omiya-san? So on December 11th and 12th, I'm going to perform in a theatrical arts in Osaka. And because of that, sorry, I was not able to come to this meeting with you prior to this session. This is held by Mori Building, right? So my relation with Mori Building. At the AD Gallery of the Mori Art Museum, I've had an exhibition. I have been engaged in arts for the past 9 years. And Towada City Museum of Contemporary Art and director Nanjo-san, who's sitting in front of me, has given me this offer to work with this museum. So Mr. Nanjo actually gave me an offer. So I came here thinking that this is about art, but the theme is actually tourism. So I thought, oh no, but I have indeed traveled many places around Japan. And tomorrow I'm actually going to Okayama. And at a contemporary art, we will have local audience. And Towada Museum in 2016, I had an exhibition. It was a 5-month exhibition. And the slogan was, open to the city. So, sorry if I have the numbers wrong, but 140 people go to the museum. The arcade is not so much of a hustle-bustle arcade. It's actually a slow business, but the museum is actually, with the arcade committee, you can join gatherings and, for example, exchange a few drinks. And that's why I thought I would participating today talking about art. Sorry that I got it wrong. So I should talk about tourism, right? Yes, so this is what I've given thought to. Tourism to me is about new me. How does this sound? Do you understand? No, what do you mean? Because of the pandemic, even after COVID settles down, I don't think we could go back to our normal lives. The word Kanko, it sounds uncool. And Go To, which is the campaign that the government is promoting, sounds uncool. I don't know if I should be saying this, but there's no, cool sounding word that could replace this. So I will continue using the word tourism or Kanko. Post-pandemic, what are we looking for if we go out to travel to the local places? I think will be a trip to find a new me. If you go to Kyoto, Kinkaku Temple might sound really good. You can wear a kimono, but that's all experience. You're not discovering a new me. It's superficial, so your values will not change. When I say new me, this could mean something different to any of us. So I think post-pandemic, I think many people are thinking about, what to do. I think all of us are shut out from the society because we are restricted to move around. We have a lot of spare time, and I think it was a good opportunity for many of us to self-reflect on how you want to live and what kind of person you want to be. So given that situation, of course, we're not going to promote the traditional tourism. So I think everyone has an ambiguous vision of how you want to develop yourselves in a new way. Maybe you want time where you don't have to do anything. Or maybe you want to live in the nature. I think everyone has different aspirations of what kind of new me you want to develop, and I think the urban areas have an opportunity. These other cities do not need to be like the new Kyoto. It could be a place that doesn't have any hotspots as long as individuals can find that new me in that area. So that is my thought about tourism. That was very easy to understand. Thank you very much. So the three panelists have given us keywords about tourism. So discovery of new me. For example, maybe you can be a new self without having to do anything. I can totally relate to that. What came to mind is at Okutama, there is a friend that is in forestry. And the friend was talking about how to make use of this mountain. There's a lot of mountainous landscapes in Japan. It's a landscape. It's a beautiful landscape. And when events cannot be held, maybe I can. My friend said that she hosted an event saying you can go to the mountain and not do anything for half a day. And that event was a success. But there's an underlying story or value. Otherwise, people will not be motivated in going to the mountain. For example, even if Tottori Prefecture says, let's plan an event where people don't have to do anything, that's not going to be popular. It needs to have a clear story. Maybe we are living busy lives, or maybe we want to be away from the digital life because we've been working in front of the PC all day, and you want to be away from these electronic devices. If local municipalities have a deep discussion and can find a value, it can attract people. Also, recently, crowdfunding has been popular.
If you want to do something for society, something good for society, that is a good cause. So from that perspective, in order to rebuild local economy, although you are not from that area, you just want to be part of that movement. For example, I often go to Tottori, so I often cite Tottori as an example. There is Professor Maeda, who is famous, so you need to have something to be respected. That is why you want to be there, part of the local community, contributing to the local economy. That makes you a new me, new person. I think that will be an important tourism resource in the future. Tourism used to be just going somewhere, finding something, but as you mentioned, something that is invisible, but there, you will be able to go there and experience that value. So it's not exactly the traditional Kanko in Japanese, it's more closer to tourism. So, Professor Kubo, would you like to discuss what tourism means, what Kanko means? Yes, I'd like to share my slides. As Omiya-san mentioned, the Japanese word Kanko doesn't sound quite fascinating, so I don't really want to use the word Kanko. I'd like to say that I teach tourism rather than Kanko. So the word Kanko, the Japanese word, is often misunderstood. This is a Tourism 101 that I teach to new students. I ask students what is the definition of tourism and what is the definition of Kanko. Many won't be able to answer. So the word Kanko, the Japanese word, do you know what it means? What is the original meaning of this word? So it literally means seeing the light. In English, I do give class to foreign students, so I show this picture. Something that is shining, the light emitted. So the act of going to see the light, that is the earlier definition of Kanko, being able to see the light, see something that is great about the country. So being able to see something remarkable, you will be able to learn that is important. Something that is rare, something that looks fun, you will be able to see that for yourself. That is Kanko. So it's more like sightseeing rather than tourism. So on the other hand, if you look at this world tourism, you would not understand how this word came about. Now, what is this? I asked this question to students. The foreign students say this is a putter. So it goes round and round. So people actually go around. Now this turner comes from the Latin word of tonus. So people move from place A, going to place B, and coming back to place A after looking around. So this is completely different from sightseeing. So this essential difference needs to be understood first. This is a formal explanation. UNWTO has a tourism definition. Simply put, tourism comprises of activities of leisure. It's not just leisure, but it can be business activities. There are multiple purposes outside the tourist's usual environment. If they come back home within 1 year, that will be a tourism. So it has a wide definition. At any rate, people move around, learning something or impacting something, coming back to their home. This is the definition of Mason Peter. This is the tourism in laceration. There is a tourist generating region. The people living there, if they want to travel, they will become tourists. And they travel to destinations. They stay there and then come back. So that's the tourism. This tourism is quite dynamic. It's always moving. People move. You may analyze people living there as part of economics and try to understand the ways to make the local people happier. But what is interesting about tourism is that a dynamic research studying what impact tourists can bring about to the local destination. It's almost like a class that I teach. Earlier, Tsukada-san criticized as inbound tourists are increasing. You can't stop it because globally there are people who travel to foreign countries since 1995 for 20 years. The number of global international tourists grew from 530 million to 1,180 billion. In 1995, there has been the launch of Windows 95. You understand exactly why we have had explosive growth of international tourism. In 2019, about 1.5 billion people across the world actually travel to foreign countries at least once in a year. Of course, there are people who travel multiple times throughout the year. Up to 2019, I am pretty sure many of you have traveled abroad at least once or twice a year. So when you look at tourism from this perspective, you would understand that can account for 10% of the global GDP. And you see this number, 28%. These are foreign visitors coming to your country, and they will actually contribute to the economy at this rate. And 23% and 77%, 23 represent business travelers. So a quarter of travelers do participate in tourism industry, spending money, contributing to the industry. But in 2020, especially this business travel completely collapsed, and leisure as well, despite, this drastically reduced. And inbound tourists in most every country dropped completely. So this is a long-term forecast based on 2010, the number of tourists. There was a forecast to double, and up to 2019, this exceeded the forecast. But it's completely collapsed in 2020. So what could happen after this? In the near future, when COVID-19 settles down, I think this is going back to original growing curve. So why is this possible? As I said earlier, population is growing and per capita income is also increasing. Innovation is accelerating tourism, making it easy for people to travel to foreign countries. There is no stopping of globalization. So there are a lot of people who haven't been able to travel to foreign countries. If I ever use Kanko, there will be people who are motivated to travel. What you see here is the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you move up from the bottom, the people will be more motivated to travel. In order to meet physiological needs, to ease stress or to recover from fatigue, you might want to travel. And then on the next level, you want to travel because it's safe, to become more confident, to become healthier. On the next level, you would like to be able to feel that you belong to somebody. You want to make family members, your friends, lovers happier. And then on the next level, you want to be approved and recognized. That's why you travel. And eventually, you want to actualize yourself, to pursue who you are. You travel to different places, coming back to discover yourself. Sorry that I'm speaking for a long time. The conclusion is this: being able to see something that is shiny, that sort of tourism. I think the initial visitors to Kyoto, for example, they would come to Kyoto to see something shiny, but many of them will come repeating tourists visiting different places. The number of inbound tourists we have had, it was 2.3 million people, but there was a mix of tourists. But in the future, they may travel because of the lowest need, but there will be higher levels of needs. I think there will be much room for further growth in tourism.
Sorry that all of a sudden it became like a lecture in school. No, that was very easy to understand. Thank you very much. So since we have an audience today, and because we have you as the panelist, we would like to talk about specific ideas. So talking about interacting with the local community, and also we mentioned about nature tourism and also agri-tourism, where you take part in agriculture. Going forward, I think this can be one of the deep trends that will be developed. But let's say if we are involved with a local municipality and we are asked to accept tourism so that there can be an interaction with the local residents. If there's like a 2-night, 3-day package or plan, I think many of the local municipalities might have difficulties in how to plan that kind of a package. So, Omiya-san, you talked about a museum in a local city. We often say interact with local community, but when you were involved with this museum project, what exactly did you do? In other words, are you asking for us to generate ideas on how we can activate tourism? Not Kanko again, but tourism. So we want to propose new ideas and forms of tourism. So if we're going to think about tourism, I think we might think about out of the box of tourism, outside from tourism, because I think everyone's needs have diversified. So even at the lowest level of the hierarchy of needs, And even at the very top, the self-actualization, it's diversified. There are people who don't watch TV nowadays. Our lives have diversified. So to go to a specific place, there's probably some kind of a trigger, right? So outside of tourism, for example, for me, I like art. I want to go see art. I want to be involved with art. So maybe I can be a staff of an art project and I can interact with somebody there from the local city. So again, art could be one trigger, and the other one could be about food or cuisine. You can experience food, something that is organic. Let's say I can rent a farm that can develop organic food. I can get advice from an expert. And there in that local town, there are agriculture experts. And so it requires a key that bridges between the user and the local city. And I think this is how local tourism can be promoted. Thank you. Mr. Fujii, any ideas? Earlier, you've said that because we are restricted to travel since COVID, you often receive consults from many people about virtual tourism. I think experience can be made in various forms. In the past, you had to physically go there to gain an experience, but nowadays, by making use of digital technology, you can gain a similar experience. And another big factor is sharing the experience with somebody else, sharing the value with somebody else. So if it could be a very shabby CG, but if you go there with a friend and you had a very fun conversation, fun experience, that becomes a memorable experience. So someone who is a national treasure, maybe you can attend a workshop of this human national treasure. That could be a fun experience. But also in your everyday life, there are wonderful experiences that have potential. So it doesn't mean that you have to go somewhere out far to gain a fun experience. So tourism, if possible, maybe you want to go out of the everyday hustle bustle and gain a unique experience. It's a consumption behavior, which is one of the keywords included in this theme. So if you think about tourism and technology as a set, how can we make use of that so that people can make a living out of it? It's not simply about consumers gaining a fun experience, but I think we need to also build a scheme so that people can make a living out of it. So what kind of changes do you personally experience over the last 2 years? Has your feelings towards traveling changed? I lived in Tokyo, but I moved out to Atami. That's what I thought. And I actually opened my own cafe. Wow. And local people come to my cafe, but nobody knows me. So people come clueless of who I am, and they say, the coffee is not good, although the view is great. Or they say the BGM sucks. And an old man actually gives me this kind of a feedback, which I find it interesting. So because of COVID, you decided to go to Atami. I did have a second house in Atami, but I moved out there completely because of COVID. Why is that? Did you feel that there's no need to have to live in Tokyo? I thought, why not give it a try? And everything worked out, and that's why I'm not coming back to Tokyo. Why? Because Tokyo is too busy and Atami is full of nature? Why did you decide to completely move to Atami? I couldn't find a reason to live in Tokyo. That's what everyone says. Yes, there's no reason. Okay. So a lot of people around me actually say the same thing. There's no reason in staying in Tokyo. So if everyone moves out to the suburbs, then obviously traveling and tourism is going to change. Yes, I don't have to travel out anymore because now I live in Atami in the nature. Maybe this is something bad, but I don't want to interact with the local community. That's really candid. That's fine. If you go out to the suburbs, I think you need to feel the need to get along with people living in the neighborhood, and there's also trouble about how you take out the trash. I don't have that. So I have a studio, and I've spoken with a realtor that I'm looking for a studio, and the realtor said that there's many people in Tokyo who want to open up a studio out in the suburbs, but they don't want to get involved with the local people. And so there's a lot of people who share the same experiences, same value as you. And if you are engaged in business with them, for example, my vendors, like my veggie vendors and my fish vendors, because I'm the client, they are friendly to them. And these are, local people. So that's interaction with the local people. But I do not want to get involved with, middle-aged women living in my neighborhood because I don't want to get into a quarrel about how to carry out the trash. I have been living in Tokyo for a very long time, but my family now lives in Fukuoka because of various reasons. Beppu is about 2 hours away from Fukuoka. And I've been commuting between Tokyo and Beppu. And so last year, for the whole year, I was in Beppu and I worked online or worked remotely. So you lived in Beppu no Fukuoka at that time. And so meetings amongst professors, because everything was held online, I participated from Fukuoka and don't have to come to Tokyo. Like you said earlier, you no longer have the need to travel since you moved out in the suburbs. I think that's for business reasons, but for leisure, last year, government promoted Goto Travel, and I thought it would be a waste of opportunity if I don't make use of it. So I was motivated, and I've never been to Universal Studios Japan, so I thought, great opportunity, why not go there? So I did go to Universal Studios. If you take a look at the people who are making use of hotel, it has gone back to the same level of next year. But that coupon cannot be issued forever. Yes, but even without the issuance of the coupon, in which the government subsidies, I think if we are allowed to travel, I think it will go back to the pre-pandemic level. It may, but I don't think it will be sustainable. In the past, I had gone there for business reasons, but that needs will no longer exist. But when it comes to leisure, even if I don't want to travel, my kids want to travel. And if we can now travel overseas, I would love to travel overseas. And I want to take my children abroad as well. And I think everyone else also feels the same way. So given the current situation, when you think about where to take your kids, maybe temporarily, the government coupon, the Goto Travel, might be a good motivation. But like Omiya-san said, the government cannot subsidize forever. If there's a good deal, then people go. Or if there's delicious food, people will go there. And like Mr. Kubo said, people might go to, certain tour site locations because they want to see something shiny. So what we hear from the municipal governments is that they have famous delicacies, but how about other areas that do not have that kind of a delicacy? Then what should they do? Not only to link the municipal governments with people's personal interests, whether it be nature or something else, I think a small story will need to be built to create that linkage with the consumers. Yesterday, we had a deep discussion about this. So in any case, not just fulfilling the desires of an individual, but what lies in the local community, digging that up, bringing it back, might be a trigger to promote tourism in the future.
But if I dare make a responsible statement, these two gentlemen do not live in Tokyo any longer. There must be reasons. He didn't move to Atami because of the work. He didn't move to Atami to eat fresh seafood. There were reasons. Maybe they loved the scenery, local scenery. When you live in Fukuoka, were you from Fukuoka? Why are you living in Fukuoka? Well, there has been professional ties there, so I moved back there. I have a friend who moved back to Fukuoka recently. He said that there is no reason to stay in Tokyo. So they often visited Fukuoka, but decided to live in there. That can be possibly a new form of tourism because they will contribute to the local economy. And Mr. Fujii wrote on the board, one of the three was housing, living there. Recently, municipal governments are asking people to live for some time on a trial basis, renting out a house. For example, Higashicho in Hokkaido has an initiative like that. City of Ise is introducing creator in residence on a trial basis, calling out to creators to live for some time, for them to be able to publish their artwork, giving them an opportunity. This is the expanded form of tourism, residence. Living there, why do you want to live in a certain location? It's not just the local environment. The people talk about a good environment for children's education, the local economy have good or school, or the local system is good, the welfare system is good, that they have daycare centers for their children and so forth. I think these can be new values, new strengths. So it's more about how people feel. It's more about feeling about the locality. Why did I not go to Oita with my family? That is because my children, they actually go to international school. Fukuoka is the only prefecture in Kyushu that has international school. If Ritsumeikan decided to set up an international school for children, I would live near Ritsumeikan. So if there are local areas where raising children is easier, a lot of people would come in. Karuizawa, for example, Nagano Prefecture is so much into education. More than 10 families that I know have moved to Karuizawa. But Karuizawa, the things are very expensive there. And that is true. Kadokawa and Durango actually created a new internet advertisement. There will be educational opportunities that can be created at any location. As you mentioned, Karuizawa is wonderful, but there is a famous school. But you would have to be going through selection to be able to go to that school. So the people who have privilege may be able to go. Those who do not have privilege, they have to use the government coupon to travel. So that can be quite exclusive, experience-based, rich DIY tourism, but that's only targeting high-end people. So high-end people can actually spend a lot of money there. But Mr. Fujii talked about the common consumers. How can we actually encourage them to spend more in tourism? There is much room for exploring different ideas there. It's not a good idea to create a noodle shop where people actually create a queue. If you can make it exclusive, saying that there are only 5 people can participate, and this festival can only occur once in 10 years, only celebrity people can participate. It's not even a tourism industry. So there must be a better way. There will be a rising consumption tax. That actually pressures people's livelihood. There are a lot of people who may not be able to live in Tokyo. This gives a lot of local communities opportunities to receive people, providing better environments, providing better educational environment for children, and single mothers too. There are many of them. The local community may be able to provide better support to single mothers. The local economy that was not growing was able to provide better services with kind hearts. So what do you think of the working mechanism for a local community to be able to rebuild their economy through tourism. I think it's case by case. Having said that, we already have a theory. This is the landing tourism. You land there, so tourism may stay or may not stay. This is the opposite of hatching tourism, meaning that a travel agency carry out marketing offering package tours. So it's bringing a lot of tourism to a city like Tokyo. So they come here, consume, and go home. This was the conventional way of making money, but the landing-based tourism is different from that. There will be different marketing activities providing added values to tourists, and decide who should be targeted and make sure that they will be happy and satisfied so that they can come back on a tour. This way of promoting tourism has begun taking roots. So what you need to do is to be able to identify what tourism resources you have, how can you add values to what you can offer. I see, as Ms. Omiya says, you need to really explore what you can offer outside the framework of tourism. So if that's the landing type of tourism, as we discussed yesterday, people are actually living there in the local community. There are people from outside coming in. They will be able to find fascination about the local area, which the local residents may not have been able to notice. Is it simply a hot spring? Perhaps not. There will be better values that can be discovered because of tourism, maybe the education as well. There are potential needs on a global scale that can possibly be satisfied by local communities. It can be energy issues that young people are highly aware of. A lot of things that you would love to see in your daily lives. These needs can possibly be matched by the local destinations. Omiya-san, what do you think? It's quite difficult. I won't be able to catch up with this discussion. I think opportunities should not be created. We already have online. We can be connected remotely. In 2020, immediately before COVID-19, I organized Ellie's school, creative school online. I write scripts for theater. I actually compose many things. I was often referred to as multiple talents. But this can be a power. In other words, unprecedented things can happen like COVID-19. So your plan A fails, your plan B also fails. But if you're flexible, you can be plan J or H or even plan X. If you are creative enough, you don't have to panic. So I thought we need to focus on creative. That is why we opened the school, online school on creatives. It's been 9 years since I wanted to do this, so I thought I wanted to do this in 2020, the Olympic year. But because of the COVID-19, we decided to organize that online, but actually had other people from Hokkaido and Okinawa participating. We became acquainted with each other, meeting fascinating people. The people actually meet the people who would never have been able to meet in person. As we try to focus on creation, they became friendly with each other. Oh, you live in Okinoshima? Your rent is only 20,000 yen? Oh, you're eating fish so often? you're giving fish? And then the other person decided to go to Okinoshima. These two people have never been able to meet because of the online community. They were able to provide opportunities for these people to meet.
Thank you. So you've talked about a new way of building a community. Fujii-san, you've talked about virtual environment and also developing interpersonal relationship virtually. Any thoughts? Whether it be online or offline, basically, how to build an interpersonal relationship is going to be the same. At the end, it's a human-to-human relationship. But like she said, for time, you cannot help it. But when it comes to distance, I think the technology can be the solution. You can do anything. There's also a time difference issue. If you're talking with somebody abroad, and if it's a three-party talk, like, for example, earlier there was a keynote speaker participating from someone who has a big time difference, that will be difficult. But I think when it comes to developing people, it's the same offline or online. I may be digressing from tourism, but in any case, you can use that as a base in creating something new. And so I think we live in great times where that is now possible because of the technology. If the audience might have any questions, we would like to take them. Is there anything? Yes, there's one hand in the back. Thank you for this very interesting discussion. I am a university student. So when my friends travel, they post Instagram stories. And you've spoken about from Kanko, it's going to convert into tourism. From a university student's perspective, while we travel, I think there is an interaction of Kanko and tourism. So on Instagram, they want to take something that is shining, posted it on Instagram, and then arrange it by putting yourself in the same frame. And also, during the trip, you gain experience with friends and enjoy it. So on day 1, we do sightseeing, but on day 2, day 3, we do something that is more like what you define as tourism, where we gain experience. So I think right now, traveling is about the combination of two, Kanko and tourism. Thank you. So when I speak to my students, how they travel is completely different from me. I buy a travel guidebook. And I have a thick book all about Europe, and I actually cut out the pages when I travel to specific locations within Europe. I also do online research, but the students nowadays do research completely different from me. When they reserve a hotel, they use a comparison site where they compare the prices and find the most affordable one. And they do not book it right away. They research about that specific hotel on Instagram and look around for information. And not only that, but like you said, the students not just only take a look at the tour spots, but actually do a lot of research about how they can engage themselves. So they are enjoying the entire process of research. And I think that is completely different from how we plan our travel. And also digital transformation is underway right now. So how to make use of digital technology to convey information to consumers is going to be important. Places that are communicating well through digital channels have been successful in attracting young tourists. And for areas that unfortunately have not succeeded, I think they can leverage from somebody young, just like yourself. Yes. Oftentimes, I see foreign tourists taking pictures on the street, and I ask them what's happening, and they say, actually, we saw on Instagram a photo of a particular spot and we want to take the same exact picture. And then so I give them instructions on how to get to that particular site. But what happens when they take that photo? Do they come back the following year and take the same photo at the same spot? In order to, attract those foreign tourists to come again, not only that it should fulfill the needs for them to go to that spot, I think they need to be emotionally attached to that spot. It needs to provide some kind of more value. Otherwise, these people are not going to come back. If you have an emotional attachment, like you want to see someone specifically or you want to eat a specific food from that location, then they will come back. And even if you move out to a new place, I don't think you would go out to a place where you don't know anyone. I didn't know anyone when I moved out to Atami. Then why did you decide to go there? Well, it so happened that I found a house that I liked in Atami and I bought it. And I moved out. What you just mentioned right now at a museum exhibition in Roppongi, a friend of mine is doing curation. And a TikToker posted, and it became a big buzz. People came to the museum, therefore, and have taken a lot of pictures, but they're not really interested in the artwork itself. Looking at the hashtag on the Instagram, there's a lot of photos being posted, but they're not really interested in art, and it's actually inhibiting the people who are the true art connoisseurs. That could happen. So, just because something turns into a buzz and that generates a lot of, customer traffic, that may not be all positive. It could be an inhibitor. And also, there are locations where you can take as many photos and still not be satisfied. Like I said at the beginning, that location probably has a unique story that you have built within yourself. I think you've discovered a new story there, and that's why these people are not completely satisfied simply by visiting that place. I know this is very ambiguous and difficult to describe in words. So instead of just being photogenic, there are people who are living in three locations, and I think these people will be like bumblebees, traveling from one spot to another, like a catalyst. Like maybe there's one person who has always been busy. However, that person changed and became a little bit more relaxed. Maybe that person moved out to the suburbs, and that's what changed that person's personality. So instead of just being photogenic, I think these locations can help you discover a new self. I think that is going to be interesting. In the suburbs, there might be a really fantastic place, but they do not have any Instagram accounts. There's no online community. And if that's the case, I think those local cities will have difficulties in attracting young people. So someone who is knowledgeable about digital should get into that city and help that city out. Yes, I think striking the right balance is going to be important. Do we have any other questions from the audience? Today's theme is Visions of Tourism, right? And I've been taking part from last night's session. This talk is very interesting. And you have given specific examples about interesting local tourism. But I don't feel like I am hearing about visions of tourism through this session. Inbound. Prior to the visit, there was about 31 million inbounds, and 75% were either Chinese or Korean. And including Southeast Asian, it's 80% of the entire inbounds coming to Japan. Why did they choose Japan as the destination? It's not about gaining experiential value. People who have said experiential value is a minority. And it's not about culture, but they come because they say it's cheap. Shopping and food is cheaper in Japan. That's what the majority of the inbounds say. And 70 to 80% of the tourism in Japan. The biggest problem is that tourism is concentrated on certain months. Recently, it has scattered, but generally speaking, tourism inbounds come during the specific time slot of the year. So in this session, you've talked about DIY tourism. Yesterday, to the affluent people living abroad, there was a company providing tourism for this premium segment. And it was interesting. However, the volume is only 1,000 people. So amongst 100 million, only 1,000. So yes, that story was interesting. However, I have to pose the question, how many people actually visit and take part in these packages? It is only reaching a certain minority. And how can that be leveraged in the future to promote the tourism industry? The Asian people are visiting Japan because they say it's cheap to travel here, even if we provide them experiential value. Can Japan as a country, although they say they want to promote tourism, is simply providing experiential value enough? How much profit can that really generate? I'm questionable. So whether it be inbound or the fact that we have tourists coming only on designated months of the year, if you can give us some success examples and how can that be converted into mass tourism going forward? If you can talk a little bit about that, that would be very much appreciated.
If I may, thank you for your question about inbound. There are complicated stories, as you mentioned earlier. Asian tourists coming to Japan because it's cheap, but not only so. We have had increase of about 30 million because many of them are repeating tourists. Especially Tohoku region, there has been dramatic increase of inbound tourists. Do you know where they come from? You won't be able to have an idea where. Many of them come from Taiwan. They actually visit Akita and Aomori prefectures. The cost is not all that cheap. They actually spend a lot because they are able to enjoy food and snow as well. Being able to see the snow in the winter season. So did they simply wait for that to happen? It's not true. They actually went to different places to carry out promotion. And because of that, they are succeeding in receiving many inbound tourists. So it's been successful. It's been effective. But because of the COVID-19, there has been a decline in trend. So they have to reset. But if they continue to work on that promotion, even though you may start with only 1,000 tourists, and if you can increase the number of these local communities working on it, I think there will be a brighter future. Small-scale efforts, I start to see them to be able to be effective because of internet. As you mentioned, it could be only 1,000 people, but if there are 1,000 locations who succeed to do that, it will be 1 million. So it doesn't have to be HIS or JTB achieving trillions of revenue. It doesn't have to be that way. The mass tourism will survive. They are already established. They can continue to do so. But those who would not like to use those major travel agencies, there will be a need, and need will be satisfied by a new industry. That will be the future. Yes, we talked about the localized success. Being able to succeed is almost a miracle, but because it wasn't possible before. It could be local tourism. It could be a tourism within the metaverse. Being able to earn income. The visitors enjoy the experience wanting to come back. There is a cycle. Being able to have this repeated cycle is quite important. I think I start to see diverse experiences being offered. Conventional mass tourism is one. I think we are happy to see a new trend separated from that. So there are more than one solutions. I think there should be multiple solutions tried out, and I think today we have a better possibility of success. My vision for the future, when I went to Kyoto, the inn owner and taxi drivers said that we excessively relied on inbound. Yes, they will come back after the COVID, but they have to be prepared for the future. I think the question is how we can make the best use of this learning of COVID-19. The people who haven't had the opportunity now have a chance. There is a possibility of those who were latecomers in this market may be able to take over succeeding tourist industry or destination. There may be a paradigm shift. I think the point you shared with us is quite important. On the other hand, when this paradigm shift or game change occurs, in Japan and abroad, we are always exposed to this possibility of hit by a disaster. So it's not just trying to achieve economic growth. We need to consider that we all are sustainable. As Fujii-san mentioned, it could be a localized solution that can build a possible tourism future, the future of the local economy. And that depends on our own choice that we make as well. With that, we only have 3 more minutes. Based on what we discussed, I want you, each one of the panelists, to talk about the vision of the future tourism, your own personal view of the future of tourism. Omiya-san, would you like to start? What was the question? The future of tourism. Perhaps your new me. What does that mean to you? Let's say there is a luxurious hotel. I used to love to stay there, but for the past 2 years, I have no desire to go to the high-class hotel. I just want to stay in a location as if you were living there. And I now know that I want to live in multiple places, not just one single location. It seems that many around me have the same desire. I don't know exactly what this means, but this is a new discovery inside me. My own desire, I want to be aware of that and cherish that. Kubo-san, similar to Omiya-san, I never really wanted to camp up. I now have tools. I took children to a camping site, actually on multiple occasions. Unless COVID hit, I would never have done that. So there has been a change. If you try to take that COVID impact positively, this can be a good opportunity for a complete change for a better, positive change, to be able to accept more diversity. Thank you. Lastly, Fujii-san, please. So I'd like to say that, as Omiya-san said, when you get up in the morning, when I used to live in multiple places, you get confused. First thing in the morning, when you're sleeping, you don't think. But when you wake up in the morning, it's bright, it's all white, you have no information about where you are, and it's fun. it is as if floating somewhere. And then you realize, well, yesterday I ate that, I did this, so I must be in Atami. So being able to discover where you are every morning was so much fun. So it's the kind of value that you will be able to enjoy. Every night you lose your consciousness as you sleep, and then you became alive once again when you get up in the morning. You're confused at first, being able to discover who you are, where you are. It's a lot of fun. It's a fun part of brain science. Sorry, this is not a good summary. Thank you. As Omiya-san said, the keyword was new me. Whether you travel or not is up to you. It's your decision. It's different from local destination, how to receive tourists. But for a tourist, you want to discover yourself. So the local destination may be able to propose opportunities for people to discover themselves. We're happy to have Omiya-san, Kubo-san, Fujii-san. Thank you very much for your participation.